So we will call to order at 6:34 and start with the pledge of allegiance.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. We move right on to item C of the agenda, public comment. This is a quick reminder. We do allow public comment both in person and online. We start with in person, and then we, as soon as that's complete, we'll open up comments online. If you're interested in speaking in your virtual with us tonight, just raise your hand. Devin will unmute you, and we can move forward from there. So public comment in person.
Ned Staction, 6 Bella Lane. I don't know if I'm sorry.
Yep.
Okay. I just want to make a point that my wife and I, we took advantage of the solar program that the town offered a few years ago. And when they were getting ready to put the solar panels on, because I only had 2x6 rafters, I had to put in supports under every other ceiling joist or roof joist. And I know we're not having solar panels as part of this program or the school project now, but I think it would make a lot of sense to allow for in the design, the future load of solar panels, so that we don't have to go back if we decide to do a solar project in the future. We don't have to go back and strengthen beams, strengthen columns in order to support the load of the solar panels. So at this point in time, while it's still in design, it's a very small cost to just size up their beams and columns a little bit. And it would make a lot of sense, and it would make it a lot easier to do a solar program in the future. Thank you. And thank you, committee, for all their time and efforts on this.
Anything else? All right, we will open up for public comment. In Zoom.
Okay.
Go ahead, Jen.
Hi, it's Jay Tooley. Can you guys hear me?
Yes, you can.
Okay. Jay, I'm the 860-470-5156, if you didn't know that by now. Anyway, Jay Toolin, 39 Timberline Drive, Chair, Farmington Human Relations Commission, and member of the Citizens Coalition for Equal Access. So Ruth Groby wrote a letter. I know she sent it to Kat. I'm not sure if it got part of the record in time, but she couldn't be here tonight, so she asked me to read this letter at the meeting tonight in support of the Universal Design Consultant, which you all know I already am in support of. And I'll try to make this, it's a little bit lengthy, but I'll read it as quickly as I can. And this is on behalf of Ruth, who was my predecessor as the chair and a member of the Citizens Coalition for Equal Access, and also served on the Village Center Committee as a universal design expert. I hate to use the word expert, but she was my guru as far as my knowledge of universal design. So here we go. I am an able person who for years believed that the ADA had taken care of all accessibility problems for people with physical disabilities. I used to think, just make sure that whatever you are building is ADA compliant and you are all set. However, in the past 20 years of being an advocate with and for people with disabilities, I've discovered that this is far too simplistic an approach for two reasons. First, in designing built spaces for people with a wide range of physical needs, the devil is in the details, and if you aren't extremely familiar on an experiential level with what it's like to use a wheelchair, you don't really understand. Second, ADA regulations are myriad and very specific to one accessibility issue or another, but it is the way in which all the regulations combine into one integrated whole that makes the building accessible, not compliance with each individual regulation. Let me give you a specific example of each point that I have just made. With respect to being familiar with wheelchairs at an experiential level, I would point to the example of Matt Bloom, our former town engineer in Farmington. Matt was very knowledgeable about ADA and very sympathetic to the needs of people with disabilities, but when I questioned the use of decorative cobblestone strips on the new sidewalks in Unionville Center, Matt assured me that they were ADA compliant and they would be fine. Then tragically, Matt's daughter ended up having health issues and using a wheelchair. She struggled with the decorative cobblestone strips, and Matt told me that he had changed his mind and now thought that the strips were terrible. With respect to my point about ADA regulations as an integrated whole, I would point to the McDonald's in Unionville Center. The ramp up to the main entrance is ADA compliant, the automatic doors are ADA compliant, and the width of the sidewalk in front of the doors is ADA compliant. However, there are steps leading up to the sidewalk directly in front of the doors, and the automatic door button is located on the wall of the building such that once you press the button, you have to quickly maneuver your wheelchair out of the way because the door opens onto it, and if it hits your wheelchair, it will automatically close. So a subset of wheelchair users have to have the button with their one good arm and then quickly get the arm back to the joystick of their wheelchair so that they can quickly back up out of the way of the opening door. If you are part of the subset of wheelchair users, you struggle to move their arm quickly as you are backing away. You also have to make sure that you get your hand off the joystick in time to stop your wheelchair from backing into the stairs that are directly across from the McDonald's entrance. So, it is the way in which all the ADA compliant features work together that makes for true accessibility, not just blind adherence to the ADA. People who belong to the subsets, people who are in the minority, people with highly individual needs, they are people too, and they deserve an equal place in our society. That is what the word universal is all about in the term universal design. At the new Farmington High School, let's avoid the design mistakes made in Unionville Center. Please hire a universal design consultant, much like the Institute for Human-Centered Design, which has years of experience with wheelchair use and with the integration of all the different ADA regulations into a workable whole. Just my 2 cents. I wholeheartedly concur with everything Ruth just said. I think her examples are a perfect example of why a universal design consultant would really benefit this project, and I appreciate the opportunity to speak to you tonight. Thank you.
Thank you, Jay. Anybody else? Awesome. All right, thank you very much for comments this evening. As I always mention, we do have the opportunity as well for people to submit comments, questions, thoughts via the website and the submission form on the website. So please feel free, anybody who's watching us after the fact or is on Facebook Live with us this evening, please feel free to submit questions, comments, thoughts via that website contact form as well. All right, we'll move right on to minutes. The first, I get a motion to approve the attached August 11, 2021 minutes. Any discussion? This is the actual building committee meeting minutes, just so you see two close together. This is the building committee meetings. Right, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Unanimously approved. Second, we have a motion to approve the attached August 13, 2021. Second. Discussion. This is the minutes actually from the Guilford tour. Very short. Yeah, you have to see them in your packet. But we, because we did have a forum, this is handled appropriately. So, discussion. All in favor? Opposed? Unanimously approved. Move on to correspondence received August 10th, 2021 through August 23rd, 2021. Is this separate from or it's a submission?
That was submitted after the last meeting, so
Okay.
it's recorded with these.
With these minutes, so inside your, I'm trying to remember which way we're going on this one. So Jay's comments are submitted inside the packet. They were within the last 2-week period, so the board will review in addition to the comments we gave tonight.
Sure.
Any thoughts, questions? Okay, we'll move right on to reports then. Chair report right after that, I don't have anything specific. We have a lot to discuss tonight, so I'm not going to take the time here. We will have some significant conversations tonight on some consultants and some of the conversations we've had before, so I'm going to leave the time for that. So we'll go right into owner's representative report.
Sure, so not a lot to report. I don't want to take up a lot of time either. I think it was important to just give everybody an idea sort of over what's happening over the next 4 or 5 months. We've talked a lot about design development and where we are, and I think it was sort of important to just share that over the next 5 months, the type of work that's going to have to go in from our working groups is going to be pretty extensive, sort of at that working group level. So we are forming our design review committee that's going to meet for the first time in September. We're going to meet right after we meet with all of the Scott's team and the department heads and all of those key stakeholders that are going to be providing input that's going into these drawings. So you think about the work that TSKP has to do in front of them and the hundreds of pages and specifications, picking every possible thing that you could think of that's going to go into that school is going to take quite some time. So over the next 5 months, imagine it's going to take us that long just to get halfway. So we're going to get to 50% of our completed design development drawings, or halfway through to what would be that final construction document set that goes out to bidders sometime in June of next year. So that first real phase is there's a lot of work, big picture work. We start to get into the design nitty-gritty, into the way the shapes of the rooms are, right? We've seen the layouts and the plans, but now we're really getting into the details. We're going to go through cost estimating process. So Richard's cost estimators are going to be providing us with updated costs as those designs develop. So you're going to see these designs fluctuate and change as we go through and make decisions at that committee level. Then there are recommendations at that committee level that come here to this building committee ultimately. And then and based on cost estimates, based on availability, based on feedback that we're getting, that's what's going to go into that, making that final design. So there's a lot of input that's going to have to happen and a huge team effort that's going to get us over the finish line and get us to that milestone of when we go out to bid publicly or with our subcontractor. On the same track, we are developing and continuing to build our professional team. So we've got the RFP and the RFQ out, or RFP out for construction manager. That's the company that's going to come in and ultimately be the CM at risk. They're the company that's going to hire all those subcontractors. They're the ones that have going to be holding that heavy weight of really producing almost $5 million worth of work a month if we kind of pull that up. So, I mean, think about, I don't know what it costs these days to build maybe a Target or something like that, but you think about a building that size, a little smaller than that, but at $5 million, I mean, you think about that's a lot of work that's got to happen in 1 month's time that might typically have a contractor build a small building in over a 12 months span. So we've got to get the right partners in place, and so there's a lot of work that goes into that selection process, which you'll all be a part of. We've got to hire our commissioning agent, so we're going to start that RFP. That's a third-party engineer that's going to be with us as our professional partner throughout this, making sure that what we're doing and what we're designing and building all along the way is what we want. To look at all the systems, mechanical systems, make sure that everything is going the way that it should. We're going to need an independent materials testing lab on board that's going to work directly for the town. Also, environmental consultants. So they're going to be doing all the monitoring and testing when it comes time for abatement of demolition of the existing building. We've seen that down the road, but we're going to be securing and building that professional team so they're all part of moving forward on this design development process. So we got a lot going on 2 fronts over the next, I would like to say we'll break it up in 5-month increments so that we hit that June date. Second half of that is really down and dirty into the details. And Richard's team building a spec book about this thick, 3 volumes, there you go, right down to the color, type, carpet, wall coverings, ceiling tiles, everything you see in this room, times multiple. So at the Benita Furniture, we're actually working with Kathy and her team. There's a lot of work to be done. So I wanted to sort of give everybody an idea, big picture, and we'll start to break down monthly what that looks like as we start to meet some more. So we'll kind of say, here's what's happening in September, and give everybody an idea. Does that make sense? I think that was it. That's all I really wanted.
You guys remember pre-referendum, we get the calendars, but as we review, we're gonna have that same approach. Moving forward, talk about things that we get to help people kind of visualize. It's not gonna be every single thing that's gonna get done in detail, but to give an overall picture and the overall timeline, which we talked about, and then month by month, we did need for us to keep track. And I like the idea of having that due thought process of, that's midway, so we've got a
January.
yeah, I'm sorry, January is like midway, so like that.
Sorry,
we
Brian.
got enough. Yeah, give you a whole year from now. That, I think that's gonna help us too, because it's overwhelming, and everything. In broad scope, so. Any questions? Oh, okay. So then we're gonna move right on to architect report. This is kind of gonna be the meat of our conversation tonight, so I'll pass that right on to you.
Okay, great, thank you very much. So this evening, I brought copies of the design drawings that we've been developing. This is nearing the end of enhanced schematic design. You may recall that we talked about a 2-month period of enhanced schematic design to more further flesh out what we had done during the competition. And that was July and August. So once we're done with this, they're going to go to the cost estimator to cost estimate this effort. After this will be design development and then construction documents. So right now we have 2 sets of plans. One is for the Farmington High School and the other is for central office. Remember, there are 2 separate grants. The state wants to make sure that we submit separate documents for each part of the project, although I expect you will build it with one builder. For those of you who are not familiar with reading construction documents, and I don't expect you to, these are divided according to the disciplines on the design team. So for instance, drawings that have the prefix A are developed by the architects, our team of designers. D represents demolition drawings. S represents all of the structural drawings that were done by structural engineers. So you look for the prefix on the page number to see who documents. We have MEP as well. There are probably 45 drawings for the Farmington High School at the moment, and maybe 8 or 10 for central office. As we proceed forward to a set of roughly 300 sheets, maybe more, maybe 50 or 60 sheets for the central office project. So this is an additive process. We expand the details as we go forward, and we just add more information. We also go back and edit what we previously did, and then it just gets folded into the set. I do want to point out a couple of things here, and these are available in PDF form, but I'm giving you, Madam Chair, these 3 sets. How you distribute these for those people who just don't want to look at little screens and maybe want to spend time with full-size sheets, I'm leaving them for you. But I do want to point out a couple of things. In both sets of drawings, we have phasing drawings. These are our initial thoughts about how the project would be phased. So we show, for instance, in the first phase, there's an early, we call it phase 1A, and that's the construction of the berm and plantings. We had promised the public when we met with various groups that we would indicate that for the builders to be done very early in the project. So that's outlined here. And then we show construction of the new building. We show the improvements to One Teeth Drive. That's all in the first phase of work. Next phase of work is demolition of the old building. at that point, we already are occupying the new building and the renovation of the former 900 unit as part of that project. And then the last phase is all of the site improvements that we're proposing be done on the footprint of the former high school. So that's clearly spelled out. All of this will be reviewed by the construction manager who is selected, and they will divide this even more smaller steps. And those will be incorporated in the final set of documents that goes out to bid to all of the tradespeople.
So just quickly, so for our purposes, we'll have these available, most likely, that you'll have one available in town hall. We have one at the high school, and we'll think about maybe like the design, maybe we have one available for them when they were making decisions. This is a huge, obviously, you can tell already, it's a small portion, but it's a huge document. So we're talking about storing it out there in Google Drive, for, people to access versus us emailing you. These huge documents for you to review. So just so you know, we're kind of figuring out how people have access, but you will have access to review in detail as we move.
Okay, great. So I leave that in your hands?
Yep.
I don't want to let them back.
Yeah, no, I think that only makes sense. Just, we have it there and good for us, obviously, with knowledge, for us to know, and we'll keep counting.
In addition to the drawings, we have the enhanced design narrative, which describes many of the major components of the project. So that's part of this progress. So that's what I wanted to deliver to you today. And I think I'm going to be speaking later, right?
No, we're gonna have to do it now, I think, right, in the architect report.
Yeah, I think we were gonna do the run through of everything, and then we actually have motions to take action on
Oh, okay.
after we
Okay.
were presented with the information.
Okay, yes, so we do have this subject, which is the additional services, additional consultants, who we are proposing be added to our contract. And let's start first with environmental design. We do have one proposal from Atlas Technical Consulting. Their proposal is $24,000. And basically, their job is to prepare the plans and specs for all of the abatements. We're going to be doing demolition drawings and documents, but abatement is a specialty that, quite frankly, we don't do. We hire consultants to do that. You have to be a licensed environmental scientist, a licensed environmental engineer in the state of Connecticut to identify, test, and quantify the hazmat materials that are contained in the old building, and then to prepare the abatement plans, showing the abatement contractors where to set up their containment areas, how to break down the demolition into stages. They don't just do it all at once. And they also will consult with the construction manager on the probable cost of the abatement work. We would be relying on that consultant to assist in that process. The only consultant that I contacted to give us a proposal is Atlas Technical Consultants. And the reason is because they've already done a lot of the work. So this is labeled ATC. That was the name of the company at that time. They've now been folded into Atlas. So there's a report called Phase 1 Environmental Assessment, Site Assessment. This is an examination of the existing high school site, what its history has been, and its background information. They do that through a process of something called Sanborn mapping, which is an insurance industry known mapping company that records the history of properties throughout the United States. It's unbelievable, but that exists. So they will tell you what has been on the site previously. And then on the basis of that, plus an examination of the site records and interviews with site users, they will compile information about any potential hazmats on the site, such as buried tanks, for example, or oil spills. And all of the test results are contained in this report. And then there's another report called Hazardous Materials Inspection Report that deals with the existing building. And in this report, they've gone through the existing high school and then did sampling of material. And you can see in this report that it's a very comprehensive report. A lot of the sampling that they did shows no detectable levels of asbestos. But there are areas that it does exist, mostly in mastic behind tile, some insulation in the attic and in the boiler room. So they've done all this work. So for heaven's sakes, use their data and then make them responsible now for doing the abatement plans and specs. It's a very reasonable price, in my opinion. We have never worked directly with Atlas. However, we worked with them indirectly when they were providing on-call services for the state of Connecticut Department of Public Works on state facilities. So they are very competent. Questions on Atlas?
You know, many schools that they've worked on in the area.
I don't.
And one thing to confirm for environmental design is these dollars are already included in our budget that was approved.
Yes.
So and at a previous meeting in July, we added this to TSKP's scope of services. So you will see later, there is a motion to then accept the proposal.
Yes. There is a markup by my office on incorporating them into our responsibility. That's pretty customary. It's actually spelled out in our contract. So,
Well, the final spreadsheet, I think, really shows the additional percentage for total cost.
okay, and so that's Atlas, environmental design. The next one is universal design. We have one proposal from KMA. And their proposal is $10,400. There was some back and forth with them. They initially sent us a proposal that included reviews of ADA details and confirmed ADA compliance. We don't need them for that. We're doing that anyway. That's part of our responsibility. But universal design is above and beyond ADA, and they can be very helpful in identifying those kinds of things that we should incorporate in our design, although they're not regulated at this time. Except they are regulated in your planning and zoning regs to some extent. But there's no state entity that regulates universal design. We have done Massachusetts school projects in which the Massachusetts School Building Authority requires us to have a universal design consultant. So we worked with KMA in the past. They're from the Boston area. I just want to comment briefly on what Jay mentioned earlier, Jay Chillen, in the letter from Ruth Roby. The letter accurately reports that this is universal design is for goes above and beyond ADA. It has to do with members of your population or community who are maybe exceptions to the typical ADA regulations and requirements. And I'll give you an example. It's an example of what we did for our project in Massachusetts. There's a population at the elementary school level that ADA doesn't quite represent their needs. And so if you're designing an elementary school, you have to comply with ADA, that's a given. So you're selecting certain fixtures, certain toilet compartment sizes, grab bars, and so on. And ADA says you have to have elevated toilet seats to meet with ADA compliance, certain sizes. But that doesn't address children's toilets. So, but the state building code ignores that. And so you have to advocate for putting little tiny toilets in elementary schools that are not ADA compliant. And then you have to argue with the building department that, look, this meets the intention of satisfying this particular population in the school. It's a similar situation. I know you're not going to have children in school, but there could be members of your population that are exceptional exceptions to the typical ADA regulation. So that's the purpose of bringing in the consultant who will be able to. The examples that were cited in the letter from Ruth Roby are valid examples. So if we had been doing decorative cobblestone strips, someone who's more accustomed to realizing that that could be a potential problem, even though the manufacturer says they comply with the ADA, someone with more direct knowledge of that, they flag that for us. And if we incorporate those kinds of things into the design, there really isn't a proven cost. So universal design should not be a burden financially. We like to work with such a consultant as KMA. We did reach out to one other consultant, but as of today, we have not received a proposal. And that's the Institute for Human-Centered Design. So I leave that up to the committee, whether we can pull the trigger on universal design tonight. Okay, any questions about universal design?
That helpful based on our previous conversations, giving a little bit more context about what this.
I mean,
I know we have questions before.
I mean, the prices are obviously reasonable in scope. I still struggle with it because, I guess my experience is a little unique because I sit on the Building and Codes Committee for the state of Connecticut. And so every day we're getting, applications for, certain things that are coming in or certain, whether it's, prepping for electric car chargers and new construction, or making sure that if you touch one piece of sheetrock, you've got to include not just this, but this and this and this. And it's always a difficult balance because we're looking at minimum building safety standards, which we far surpassed that at this point, I would say, with the building code. But I've always kind of gone back to the same thing that, if someone like the resiliency group is looking at resiliency issues, why aren't they advocating that at the level of the codes where it's spread across all buildings and all places? That maybe this is, again, I'm not saying this is wrong by any means, I'm just saying that maybe it's new and we haven't figured everything else out. So these are maybe very cutting edge companies that are really involved in this, but it hasn't gone mainstream at this point. It hasn't even been brought up at the, the 21 codes. The ink is barely dry on the papers we're looking at now, and there's no mention of this. Although the accessibility stuff is still a couple of years old, they haven't touched that since 17. So I just struggle. I personally think there's a place for this maybe in the public portion, meaning like where you come in the cafeteria and you're going to have after hours stuff. So the examples that you gave for children, you're going to see that at sporting events and at that. But in the rest of the school, we're catering to a 9 through 12, which the town and the Kathy and her whole group has experience on a daily basis for many, many years of what issues have come up. And ADA would solve probably 99% of them. And so I haven't seen the proposal, but I still don't have specifics of things. We've heard a couple examples. Children was one. The other one was your experience with the School of the Deaf, but those are very particular situations that I don't think 100% apply to what we're doing now. It's not the $10,000. I'm a business guy, I get it. So to have a second set of eyes, I'm still struggling with the specifics around what they're looking for. Seeing as this is not a renovate as new, where they may have more experience in things they've done in the past. This is a brand new building that everything is getting done 100% on paper and designed exactly to the intent. So I'm still struggling a little bit on it, even though it's still 10,000. 10,000 is still a lot of money. Richard's comment of their ideas aren't going to be big added costs. That makes me feel a lot better because obviously the short term and what is that equal to changes? Are we throwing $100,000 systems in place because of this? Obviously, I'm exaggerating, but I just don't know. and obviously it's hard for me, especially my nature, not to question things I don't know. So I'm tossed up on this one purely from a, I don't, not knowing exactly what it is. Maybe this is the exercise the town needs to actually know what it is. It's a fairly big project to test that out on. But, so I would, go along with the rest of the committees. So I'm kind of in between. That way I would go along with the majority, I guess. Is the way I put it.
I think that's a great perspective, so I think, again, we're not gonna have the conversation yet and vote on it, a couple other consultants, but anybody else want to share thoughts or?
Just, Johnny, one thing, I'm by far not an expert in it, but I've heard from Ruth Roby for years and years about it. And one thing that I thought what Richard said is that a lot of times it doesn't cost any additional money. And it's really just someone looking at it from a different perspective, that all of a sudden you could do something a little bit different and it wouldn't make that much, it doesn't cost any more money. And for the $10,000, I don't think they're going to be going through the building to that extent, but I think it's just an overview. And we've been using different groups on like almost all our capital projects and different things, just because we're not as aware, and the people that are bidding on it don't seem as aware. And it's sometimes just something very simple, but I've found that it's had some value where you never would have thought of doing it. But then when someone tells you, you're like, huh, that does make sense, a little bit of sense. And it doesn't really add cost to it. You're doing it anyway. It's just maybe you're tweaking it, or that something's a little bit lower and you just didn't realize it. So again, for what it's worth.
I think it's, your initial spend is actually about $5,400, and then there's a $5,000 allowance. Like if we want to continue that in our conversations moving forward, hey, we did this, we're gonna look at that. Right, you probably spend it, but I think your initial investment is about $5,400.
Yeah, which I, again, will just say, even from a business side of my end, is really a drop in the bucket what we're talking about. So that's why that if it came out to, 5 times that cost, I would really question it. And that's why I'm kind of wavering and would go along with the rest of the committee if they feel strongly about it.
I would think, wouldn't Richard, this process be sort of a dynamic process that's tailor-made to the building? So Johnny, as you said, on the 3rd floor in the learning quarters, we don't need toilets, low toilets. I think the universal design will be dynamic to this project that we're building. It's sort of this holistic view of the project as a whole, tailor-made to what we're looking for.
Well, we'll have a lot of conversations about toilets as we move forward, because there's a lot of variables and a lot of issues, including a sector of your community that may be in transition. So we need to think about those things. That's not necessarily universal design, but a lot needs to be thought. So we'll have those design discussions. That's what we'll do.
The only last question I would have is with this other group waiting out, and I'd be surprised if they come out much lower than $5,400 or some built-in addition just in case. So is it at this point, do you feel it's worth the wait for the second one, or has their lack of response kind of given us the answer that we need?
Well, I know KMA, I've worked with them. They very much are practical. And I like the way they approach their suggestions. So I'm very comfortable with them. Honestly, I'm sure that Institute for Human-Centered Design is very confident. I just can't say what it would be like working with them. I've never worked. Fair enough.
And just, I know I asked last time, I wasn't sure if you were able to get, I was just wondering if technology access is part of this plan, or if that's something that they.
I would hope it would be, yes. As we get into those details, I certainly. Okay, shall we move on to the next one, which is food service design? We've worked with both of these companies. Yes, there's a big difference in fee. And I think one of the major reasons for the difference is that the first firm, Crabtree McGrath, does work using tools that we like to use, which is Revit. It's a three-dimensional coordination tool between different disciplines. Food service design does not use Revit. So that's one factor. We've worked with both. You'd be willing to work with both. I think Crabtree McGrath, another difference is that it's a larger firm, has a deeper bench. Food service design has a shallower bench. Work with our confidential, which is very little bit about workload and response time.
Seeing as that this is outside of your scope, you guys will have an additional cost on that. Would there be more of a percentage on the fact that if food services go through, would you be charging more because you don't have those tools that work together?
My contract doesn't say that. It just says that flat 10%.
They're both qualified firms.
They're both qualified firms. I also discussed this with our consulting engineers, the people who are doing all of the MEP. So all the equipment that's being specified has to be piped, plugged into circuits, exhausted, ventilated, and so on. That's co-run, and co-run has a preference. Just for the higher priced consultant.
Food service is not using Revit, but are they using Revit?
They're using AutoCAD.
You guys can change how they can Revit, cut into AutoCAD. They're all
AutoCAD is two-dimensional only, and so it doesn't take into vertical heights. It's much more difficult to detect clashes. You have to basically reconstruct it in your head or reconstruct it. Just
They're auto,
they're
not
AutoCAD.
Autodesk. The Autodesk.
They're both Autodesk products.
Right.
Yes, you're correct. But AutoCAD is strictly a two-dimensional tool, at least the way food service design is.
Well, I'm just wondering from a technical standpoint, can we transfer the files from AutoCAD into Revit?
No, you don't get all the same information. It's data that's on one plane rather than in the vertical as well. So that's the difference.
Have you worked with both firms?
I've worked with both firms.
Do you have any idea why they would be so far apart? I mean, I know I get this in my own, but there's usually a pretty glaring reason.
And there was even a higher spread between the two of them. But I talked to Crabtree and I said, you gotta sharpen your pencil and do better. They said, okay, but this is what this was.
That was my next question.
Yeah. In anticipation, I already went back to both of them because I raised the same questions. But I will tell you, I like the quality of work from Crabtree. Fewer conflicts, fewer clashes in trades.
How many other firms do you typically, are there quite a few others that you've worked with?
There's a couple of others. I didn't solicit proposals.
Just asking because if you had 4 prices there and 3 of them were close to 27,000 and the other was at 93.
I will
Now
tell
we change our perspective as opposed to just.
I will tell you that typically they're higher.
Okay.
This firm out of Maryland that we used once, but we haven't gone back to them. They're higher still.
Do you see a potential if we were to go with Crabtree that they would on their design side be able to make the systems better functioning or better priced, or is there some return on the back end? And I know that's a hard one to answer, but from the professionalism and their experience and their bench, is there do they have better access to ways to build things where we may save someone, we won't ever quantify it. But that in your feeling, they would, give us a better run.
It's hard for me to say that you'll recoup the difference on the back end. It's hard to say that. I do know, having worked with food service design a number of times, that we do end up with some change orders. Because the piping and the ductwork hasn't been coordinated adequately enough. And nobody detected that there were clashes until they actually got into the field.
I would think that would be my biggest worry on the front end, getting what we paid for.
Yeah.
The price difference is a huge worry. This is a big deal.
So if we were to go with food service, just hypothetically, we get those drawings, then it would obviously take more time. Somebody wouldn't be able to take those, but them into Revit, right? We would just be working off of the 2D drawings. Or is that an extra cost that we're going to see in the back end to take those and?
I think, so this is, it's all about risk, right? If I were a gambling man, yeah, I gamble every day. I get up and I go to work and I don't know how the day is gonna end up. But if I were a gambling man, I would say the odds are for change orders higher. I can't tell you what that order of magnitude is. But
Which would result in time.
the chances are that it will be. I will tell you, in this recent project that I've been struggling with the number of change orders that have come up.
A lot of times when we see price differences like this, either someone wants it really bad because this is a resume builder. Or they don't have a lot of work, which that one I really truly don't believe right now in this environment, especially on the design side. Maybe the building side in 2 years we could say something different, but at this moment. Or I see something on the high side because they have too much work. So without having an idea of, if their benches, how they are workload and can they handle this? But if you feel it's a concern, obviously I review and trust you, so I would have to aim for the higher one against my better conservative. If you think that this is going to be a better streamlined process and we really negate the chance of change orders, that kind of.
It's definitely fast. All the numbers put together, it's a process as well. If you did harder, are we ready for the next one?
Okay, theater design. Theater design. Again, I went back to the next stage design firm, and I said, "You're too high. The spread is too great. What can you do?" They did come back and they did reduce their price, and this is as close as they could get. So we worked with next stage design a number of times. We've also, I know of Theater Design Incorporated. I have not worked with them, but he has tried on several occasions in the past to give me a proposal for including him. And I know he does high school projects. He works with other architects in the state. If you look at his resume, you'll see Stratford High School, the London High School, and he's worked with other architects. He's never worked with my firm. And he's out of New York, Northern New York. Next Stage Design is out of New Haven. They're the ones that did Guilford High School. I have a lot of faith in Next Stage Design. With theater design, it's unknown to me. I can't personally say that they would be great, but if price is the ultimate differentiator here for you, you have a choice.
The same service. Or did you have any differences?
I think the biggest difference, just as I was reviewing the proposals, was that it looks like Next Stage had more of a, they were offering more on the structural design review than their design might. So when you're looking at the rigging and the lighting, they go above and beyond, and Richard, you can stop me if I'm wrong. But that sort of was the only scope differentiator that I could really see that you could almost put some kind of value on. I don't know what that value would be. But from a perspective of hitting each task, they both represent them. I think maybe Next Stage offers more time spent. They both call out number of meetings and et cetera, and how much time they would be spending on the construction administration side. So I think Next Stage offered more hands-on in the field time than theater design did, but I wouldn't be able to tell you, look to Richard to say how much time you really need from your consultant in the field. So their design definitely has, they both have a long list of school resume, school projects that they have done. So,
Well,
I know Richard has the experience with Next Stage.
yeah, let me ask this question now. Are your people in the theater department able to answer a lot of questions about rigging and what it is for lighting that they're looking for? Can they be more specific? Because if they can be, then we can have theater design work closely with them. But if they can't, then I want someone who has a lot of experience and I feel confident in the guide the process.
It's hard to say because we've lived with the facility we have and we just make do and we try to update as best we can and work around things. And so they're very creative and resilient at trying to make, the best of what we have. We haven't worked in a state-of-the-art facility, so we really, they, when we do update, we try to do our very best. We usually do consult with experts in the area, some of which live here in Farmington, because they're involved in the Bushnell or they're involved in, various organizations that, have great expertise, the Hartford Stage, things like that. So do we have some expertise within our town? Certainly, and I would say that our faculty has passion and would research and would do everything they could, visit other schools. They would do all of that work because they love this area and want to provide the best production space possible.
Yeah.
Of course.
Do any of them, or have any of them come from other places that have more state of the art where they're comparing what they've done in other places compared to here?
I would say that because many of them are leaders, they have worked with other leaders in Connecticut who have facilities that are more state of the art, so they are aware certainly of what is out there and what's possible. So I would say on that side of things, and Lisa, you can chime in, I would say they have, because they're leaders, they're always seeking out and learning about other places and what they have and try to bring those ideas back. But very dedicated. You have a very dedicated group.
So there might be a network of
and a network.
support.
Yeah, of support. Yes, absolutely.
Richard, did theater design rattle off some of their projects? Did they provide references? Did you talk to any of them or?
I did not talk to references.
Richard, would it make sense? I mean, I don't know what the timing is, but would it make sense for maybe some of Kathy's theater people to contact some of the references or, of the schools and see what they liked and disliked?
I think that's a great idea. So they may know of these folks.
Yeah.
So if your theater people feels more comfortable with one or the other, or has experienced some of the other schools that they've done, I would welcome their input. I think that's a great suggestion.
Right, even just if they don't even know the group, they would probably know the theater.
Yeah.
And if they like how it was done.
Do we have time to set this up a couple weeks?
Yes, if you can come back at a subsequent meeting and give us some direction.
Yeah, I mean, that's the special for the school district that only does theater design, not the lighting, the sounds, stuff. Oh, right. It's just a separate hire for some of these positions just to do the theater.
Oh, wow, okay.
So,
Yeah. I was out there.
Any other thoughts on that? There's a lot of information. We'll pull slides back up when we kind of go through the motions that we did. The rest of the business to kind of taking that conversation. Any other thoughts or anything you want to share right now on this?
I guess that's what I was thinking about is, Richard, you said that next stage they designed the Guilford Auditorium, which I'm looking around the room, many of us have seen. And I think it also depends on, as a committee, what we are committed to do for theater. I think many of us walked in that theater and we were just astounded. Is that something that we'd be looking for? If it is, I don't know, you don't have history with theater design, but if we went with them, could we potentially have a theater that we've seen in Guilford High School? I think we all thought it was phenomenal.
Sure, I mean, it's possible that theater design could rise to that same level or maybe even greater. I just don't have any direct experience with them. So I think if your technical people, your theater people who are in the biz,
Yeah.
can tell us, or in showbiz, and tell us, oh yeah, we know those guys, we work with Michael Mell from theater design, he's the principal there. Or if you work with Tony Foreman at Penn State Design, if there's a good positive feedback from them, sure.
Richard, how involved are they in the overall, so their schools were very specific to lighting, ringing, draperies, that kind of thing. Seating by others, right? So there were some things that, even though what we saw wasn't probably the beat of what these two do when you walk in the room, I could be wrong. I mean, I know they.
May I have your attention, please? The time is 7:30 and the kids' place will be closing in 30 minutes at 8 o'clock. The rest of the library will remain open until 9 p.m. If there are any other children's materials you would like to check out, please visit the kids' place at this time. Thank you.
How involved are they in the overall layout of the room?
So they were involved, in the seating layout at Guilford. They were involved in the backstage area layout and design. They were involved in designing the catwalks, 2 catwalks above the seats, as well as the catwalks above the stage area, to make sure that there's safe access to those catwalks on the second floor. They also consulted on the electronics in the control room, as well as the audio-visual communication between the backstage people and the control room, that walkie-talkie system. They specified all of that. They examined all of the lights in the theater that they currently, or they used to have, and advised throw this out, keep this, throw that out. Most of it was throw out. And then incorporating some of them for education purposes. But they advised on the full lighting system. That's what it's. Acoustics, we have somebody else, then they will do the theater design and next stage. I'm good.
Just one more slide. Just one more slide.
Oh, sorry.
Oh, that's summary recap. So this is Johnny, where you see our
huge markup on all of these. We do have to take into account as part of this amendment. Right, we broke the spreadsheet out into, where the dollars are coming out of, so the top two are already built into our professional fees. The other two, food service design and the food designer, will be coming out of our. So the broad scheme of things, we've got about $3 million in professional fees. So 37,000, not 3 million. It's not gonna be $5 million. Just a few years. Not that every dollar is good, every dollar is going to get spent on something. So whatever you're not spending here, you're spending on some other option. But this just gives you the total proposed with the kids get fees, right? So that's what you do.
We're good for right now. Thank you, Richard. That was very helpful. We're going to go ahead. We have a couple other reports to get through, and then we're going to go right into new business, which we're actually going to have see if we can make some decisions around what you just talked about. It sounds to me like at least for the year, fortunately, we're probably going to need a table anytime decision around that to get some more information. We'll get to that in business. So. Report number 4 is communications subcommittee report. We haven't met. We are obviously, remember we approved our invoice last time, so that contract's been signed. So now we'll start that process of getting the strategic communications of the project moving forward. So we'll start hearing more about communications. Professional partnerships subcommittee, same thing. We haven't met since the last meeting, so there's nothing to report. These will just stay as standard agenda items for us. But obviously, very busy committee, as Mark mentioned in his report. So that sort of management piece that we worked on, and then obviously working on additional consultants after that. So more to come. So the final report is the financial report.
So Devin's just pulling up the financial report. As I mentioned last time, we will be having 2 reports going forward. I do only have one tonight. The second one is tracking for invoices going against the authorized amount. We approved an invoice last time for CSG, but that was not separated out. So we just need to make sure we have that clear, especially for auditing moving forward. So you'll see that one next week when we're able to separate what's for the central office / locker rooms and what is for the new construction. This is our committee expenditures. We had some expenditures, including our Squarespace annual hosting fee, which is for our FHS building committee website. We also advertised the legal notice for the construction manager RFQ, so a couple miscellaneous fees in there. I included the tall timbers marketing that's on this agenda. There's an initial invoice that Ira sends upon execution of the agreement. So that's in tonight's agenda for approval. So total on hand is $94,651.05 for our committee expenditures.
So be clear on tracking. We've got 2 projects we're tracking, and those projects are, or certain expenses are being tracked, will be tracked in a separate spreadsheet that go against the dollars we've already approved in the referendum. And then we have these dollars for our committee at certain expenses.
Yeah, no, that's perfect. Yep.
Progress in invoicing continues to happen month after month. How much?
Yeah.
So you won't see those out.
I'll make sure. In case you get any questions or anything else, just so you understand. All right, any other questions in the financial report? Okay, all right, so we're gonna move on to this. I think it's probably something together. We have the slide for the that Richard reviewed with us for each one of these items, might be easier for reference to see. So I'm gonna still these in as we go for the ones that we have, as far as the motion is concerned. So never mind, that already did it for me. Standards, you know, I'm gonna have to do that in twice, you know, what would happen. All right, so for the ones obviously that we have one, company that we're considering, so right after that, could I get a motion to accept the environmental design proposal from Atlas Technical Consultants Company in the amount of $24,000?
So. Second.
Open it up for discussion. Anybody has any thoughts, concerns around this? Remember, these are dollars that are already included in our professional, or in our fees already. And we get a conversation around it. Any other thoughts or anything else that we want to share about this environmental design?
I think it's fine since that may be done with already. Some part of the process is started.
Which makes sense. We've done, as we can see, work already. And it works close to the already, so.
I'm sorry, they've worked with the district.
Oh, district, I'm
Yeah,
sorry.
these are done
These are
correctly.
district reports. Any other thoughts or questions? Okay, so all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, so unanimously approved for the proposal from Atlas Technical Consulting Company in on $24,000. Okay.
So the board, do you want to move to food design and go in the
I
order?
don't think it matters, as long as it's got.
Okay, so this one is a little trickier, this one because we have the two food service design options available to us. So the motion, how do I state the motion?
You can just state it with the blanks and then we can amend to fill in.
To add it in from there. Okay,
Yeah.
so can I get a motion to accept the food design proposal from TBD and the amount of TBD?
Second.
Hey, would be the big risk right there. All right, discussion on this. We're looking for people's thoughts and opinions on this. Remember, not includes the budget, this is part of the contingency.
Based upon the explanations that Mr. Gilbert gave, correct, treatment graphics is really with the program that they have, it seems to be more than two-dimensional. My only question is, down the road, is there a possibility that food service design would get that same program? Like, do they ever change and say, you know, or that's just the risk, like 6 months from now, they change and have a program?
My opinion.
Yes. Okay.
They gotta find someone to use it, train them.
Right, okay.
Yeah, I concur with Sharon's comments that I think that there was enough examples given that, you know, just the risk of a change order is not $50. They can mount pretty high if there's, you know, anything that comes in the wrong way. So I do think that there's a clear difference in whether they belong to each other, or that warrants the difference in price.
And that is right.
We have actually tried to use Revit, so I know the difficulties of that program with these Autodesk products, but Revit is one that
You would have to be full.
very complex.
Bill the rights. Try to go for a vote for that.
Yeah.
Okay,
So do a motion to amend and then a motion with the blanks.
all right, so can I get a motion on that, and then the motion on the table?
Motion. Second. Correct.
Like to discuss that,
Yeah, you can do it.
discuss the, make sure I get it right. All right, so all in favor of. Vote. All right, so approved to the amendment, so the motion would be to accept the food design proposal from Crabtree McGrath in the amount of $27,200. I mean,
Second.
I never did.
So many steps.
I know there isn't. All right, any other discussion on that? Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Alright, unanimously approved. Okay, so we will move on to going to do universal design. Yeah,
We could stay in order. I think I would make a motion to table this
okay.
until the next, the theater design decision, until we get a little more information from Kathy and her group.
Any other discussion?
I would have Johnny make that motion to table agenda item G3 and G4. Just because it's one, we have to vote to include them in the scope and then accept the proposal. So I would include both of those. If you
Right,
could-
so I amend my motion. Table items on the agenda, G3 and G4. So next.
Right, Sharon, you second this. Any discussion on that? Everybody's good, I think that makes sense. Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, unanimously approved to table item G3 and G4. We also have two on this, right, in G5 and G6, and the rest of the design.
Yep, put them together. I mean, can we combine them, since if we vote in favor of including one, there's only one resident in there, so. Also, I should say,
Or is it clear you want to just-
just call it a day.
Yes, please.
So I'll make a motion to approve the inclusion of a universal design consultant in TSKP Studios scope of services.
Discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? All right. Approved. All right, then I will make a motion to accept the universal design proposal from KMA in the amount of $10,000. Any discussions? All right, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Unanimously approved. Excellent, so, yes. So final item is, a motion to approve the tax invoice for health insurance, $6,000. So this is the initial invoice from, Paul Gifford's, that entire scope for the cloud value for the next 4 years. I thought they were just gonna help us with this initial invoice cost out.
So
Discussion on this? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Unanimously.
before we move to adjourn, I have a quick question, and I promise. But Richard put these out here, we're starting to get to enhanced schematic design. Is there, and you mentioned some PDFs, is there any concern that we need to have as a committee with privacy and having these plans out? Because when we went to Guilford High School, you said, we were provided with some very miniature sketches in the school, but to keep that very private for safety issues. Is there any direction you can give us on
Best practice.
what we should be doing for best practice?
So I made that request in Guilford because in Guilford, they are very cautious about releasing floor plans of their schools. And so that was their request. I would look to school administration on its policy regarding these plans. From our standpoint, we have no issue with it, but it's really a school security decision.
And we don't need an answer tonight, because obviously I'm
Yeah, I
throwing that on
mean,
you.
when it comes to like our current schools, we don't share that information. That's something that's very clear when it comes to safety and security and expectations, even from the state of Connecticut. And even our local, expert Paul Lanson is really careful about that. So I think, maybe I could, reach out to Paul and others and just say, to what extent do we share?
Sure.
I think we have to share some information. The community is wanting to know about the progress, but to what extent do we share? To ensure, the safety and security.
Yeah.
Once
Maybe some marketing type, like more color coded, very blocky kind of things maybe. And I know that I do want to look at details, like where the water comes in, and how it's distributed and all that, but I know that obviously once we get the construction doc, really don't want that out
May I have your attention, please? The time
We'll
is
look for guidance
7:50
going
and
forward,
the
I
kids'
guess,
place will be
from you guys,
closing in 10 minutes
letting us know.
at
what we
8
should-
o'clock. The rest of the library will remain open until 9 p.m. Please gather
Maybe I
your
can
children's materials for checkout now. Thank you.
If you look to me about what the content is in your maybe I can give you a hint as to whether or not, in my opinion, there could be some security. So in this set of documents, which is enhanced schematic design, we don't specify security devices. We don't specify any kind of hardened surface. That's not specified yet. At some point, we will have a whole set of documents that do talk about campus alarm systems. Perhaps those are the most sensitive things that will not be shown at that stage. So,
we have a point person at the state of Connecticut, probably like good for me to just have a conversation,
Yes.
how it's been approached.
Yeah.
With other school districts who've gone through a similar process, and, back when I wasn't here with Westwoods, but it was a different time,
Sure.
and so we just want to make sure from the beginning, we're thinking about that, so I really appreciate that you brought that up.
I really give students, the layouts of schools, so first orientation or open house with parents. Can you provide that? We have to, the school district give students and parents some sort of map, so they know what 100 is.
Sure.
So I'm just thinking out loud, if that's, writing them or drawing that would be.
This is
similar.
so general, right?
Right, they're so general, but we have to give our students that access so they know where they're going. So I'm just thinking along that side, do something similar to that.
Right. And so I will definitely, between now and the next meeting, just check in and see, what other, really, his opinion on what should be shared, what shouldn't be shared. But, this is an amazing project, and we do want to share as much as we can with the community, to really kind of celebrate each stage. But, with that overall view of, one day this will be our building, and we want to be careful along the way as we progress.
Not related to the security, but it just popped into my head that the RFQs are due on Friday for construction managers. So all of you will be receiving your homework, which will be to grade them. Using our criteria, our evaluation criteria. I'll give you a date to get them back to me or Devin by, so we have them in advance of our next meeting. What's that?
When will they be dropped off?
They're due 4 o'clock on Friday, so probably Monday.
Just I think one other anecdotal note, how many folks do we have at the walkthrough?
we had 12, I was there, we had 12 people, Chris Cycli from your office was there. It was a good turnout. They're all good firms. We've worked with quite a number of them. They expressed a lot of interest in it. Good luck.
You're gonna have a lot, which is good. I mean, it's great for the town.
It's good. It's very good.
They've been very active and involved. Presenting questions, stuff there.
And for those new members who haven't gone through this process with us in our previous, it's very well laid out. There's a lot of reading, a lot of learning, but the sheets really help guide and they kind of make some decisions and, don't go with how you're reading it, how you're interpreting it. We will have conversations about it. So I don't want, to even think that this is something we have to study for. It's, you read it and you guys read through them, kind of go through each of them.
Should only take like 5 or 6 hours.
Yeah.
Make sure you take notes.
I see it.
I try to get the last
I'm
one.
a big highlighter, like, yeah, sometimes you
Notes.
start.
We're not gonna be able to meet
blending,
here either. We can't meet here. Like, they throw us out at 9, right? We have to do that.
We're starting the meeting at like 10 in the morning. So we'll
Yeah,
be fine.
we have to think of logistics
Yeah,
of moving that meeting up a little bit,
Yeah.
just so we have time. Well, that'll be also the interview meeting at the end of September to move up a little bit. Look out for an email with more information.
As soon as we can get that figured out, the better, it's just so in the schedule. Figured out, and blocked out the calendar.
Yep.
All right, any other thoughts? All right, we might need a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second. All in favor of adjourning at 7:55? Jerry,